If you're trying to make your training more engaging, but you've been given a huge content dump to cover, or your content requires a lot of repetition and drilling, this video is for you. Earlier this year, I got totally sucked into a game called Blueprints. It got me into such a deep flow state that I didn't notice how many hours I was investing into skill building, and I thought the core mechanic of this game is something we can absolutely steal and bring into e-learning, and it would be perfect when you have a lot of content to cover because it keeps you engaged for such a long time. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how this game hijacks your brain to make repetition feel effortless, and I'm going to build an e-learning version of it so that you can do the same, and you'll see why it's so effective at putting learners in a flow state. And if you're new here, hi, my name is Mary Jo. I'm a former video game producer, and now I help instructional designers gamify their training for maximum effectiveness. I have a program to teach you exactly how to do that step by step, so if you're into that sort of thing, you can book a free call with me and see if it's a good fit for you. Now, let's dive in. So here's what Blueprints is doing. When the game starts, you find out that your weird rich uncle has died and left you his estate. You'll inherit it on one condition. You need to reach the mysterious room 46 in his mansion. So you start exploring, trying to build your way to the top, and each time you fail and restart, it's a new day. The brilliant thing is, after a few tries, I completely forgot about reaching room 46. I was just having too much fun exploring the mansion itself, and that's the shift we want to bring into e-learning. This type of game where the learner is building the game as they go, room by room, is called a roguelike. Every playthrough is different because you're generating the layout anew every time. That helps you feel engaged because you decide how to build and you're always navigating a new board. So my idea was, let's do the exact same thing. Have a game where I need to build all the way up to the top, but because this is a training game, in every room there's going to be a learning activity. So when I first enter a room, the doors will be locked and I have to pass the learning activity in order to unlock the doors and keep going. So instead of learners thinking I have to complete 50 learning activities, they'll be thinking, I wonder what's behind the next door. The activities are no longer a to-do list, they become a means to explore. So to build this demo, I need a training topic, so I asked ChatGPT to come up with a bunch of questions about something. It picked astronomy and it generated questions in 5 categories. So first I made this grid with 35 tiles, and the goal is to get to this tile right here. And by the way, I'm not worrying right now about why my player needs to get to the top. I just know that this is my goal and I'll figure out why later. So when I click a tile, it's checking to see if I can actually go there, and then my character moves and a new tile is generated. When this happens, it's picking a layout for the new room at random. I figured that there's 8 possible layouts. There's one with only 1 door, that's a dead end. There's 3 with 2 doors. There's 3 with 3 doors, and there's 1 with 4 doors. I've made these into 8 states for each of my tiles. So all my tiles have these 8 states. So when I enter a new room, Storyline picks one at random and changes the state of the tile. But then it needs to rotate it. By default, all my layouts have a door in the south, so that's the entry door. So if I'm coming in from the east, it needs to rotate by 270 degrees. If I'm coming from the west, it needs to rotate 90 degrees. And if I'm coming from the north, it needs to rotate 180 degrees. So that's all working just fine when I test it, but it's way too random. Sometimes I luck out and I can go straight to the goal, and sometimes I'm just totally blocked because I just get the wrong layouts. That feels totally unfair and arbitrary, so the next thing I'm going to do is let the learner choose the layout. So here's version 2. Now when I click, I get 3 choices of layout, and I can see what the new room will look like in context. That feels a lot more engaging, I'm more involved, but I've created a new problem. Now it's too easy. Because I have this control, I can pretty much always beeline straight to the goal. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to lock this goal. Each of these 3 doors, east, west, and south, will require a 5-digit code to open, and you'll find the individual digits randomly through the grid. So now as I'm going through the grid, I'm finding digits, and you can see how many have been found for each door. So if I just hightail it to the goal, it's very unlikely that that door is actually going to be open. So this is forcing me to explore more of the grid and find the digits. Plus, once I get all the digits for one door, it's forcing me to come at the goal from that direction because the other 2 doors are locked. Okay, so that's working nicely, and I'm having to visit a lot of tiles in order to get to the goal now. Right now, I'm just moving through rooms without anything happening in them, but remember that in each one, there's going to be a learning challenge to overcome. These challenges are the questions in my 5 categories. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show the learner what the category is. So now, when they're choosing a room, they're not only taking the layout into consideration, but also the type of challenge they'll have to face in this room. So maybe I would like this layout, but I prefer this category, so there's a little bit more strategy involved, which adds a layer of player agency. Now I've just realized these doors are going to be locked when I come into a room, and I unlock them by answering a question. But what happens if I fail and the doors stay locked? Like, am I going to have to find a way around the room? I think that would suck. So I've decided that the learner is going to have keys that they can use, a limited number. So if you fail, the doors stay locked and you have to use a key. Of course, we don't want people to be able to do that all the way through. So I'm going to limit that to about 5 keys per game. That way they can visit, 35 rooms minus 5. That means that they have to have 30 questions correct. So anyway, right now, every time you enter a new room, there is a chance that you're going to find one of these keys. So that's going to add a little bit of error tolerance. Next thing is I have to actually add the questions, which means that the door need to be locked when I enter a room for the first time so that I can unlock them with a question.
5 minutes later.
Okay, I just realized I totally screwed up how I built this. I was thinking a room would either be locked or unlocked, and I could just have like an overlay of a lock on top of it. And once you answer the question, I take it away. Or you use a key, I take that away. But the doors actually have to be independent from each other because the door through which I came always has to be unlocked. It's the other doors that have to be locked. So the way I built this with 1 image per tile is wrong. I actually am going to need extra images, 1 for each door that's going to be unlocked or locked. That's like 35 tiles times 4 doors is 140 doors. I'm going to have to rebuild the whole thing. It's a good thing I didn't make it pretty yet. Here we go.
The next morning.
Okay, so I figure if I'm going to build the whole thing with individual images for doors, I better know what I actually want this to look like so that I don't have to rebuild this twice. So like, is this a mansion I'm going through? Is it a spaceship? And I thought maybe a space station because it's about astronomy. So I started looking around on Canva and I found this image which made me think, yeah, it could be a bunch of space station parts that we're assembling together. Of course, this would be quite hard to read on screen, so I simplified it a whole bunch. So now each room will have one of these pods and each door will stick out on the side. So there's going to be 2 doors between each 2 pods. And now I've built the entire thing with individual images for doors. Each door can either be locked or unlocked or non-existent. Why do I have none as a state as opposed to just hidden? Is because once you turn something into hidden, JavaScript can't see it anymore to turn it back into locked or unlocked. So yeah, I found that out the hard way as well. And while I was doing this, I found this little guy that looks kind of like an escape pod. So I thought, you know what, that's going to be the goal. You're going to be in a space station that's dead in space, and your goal is to get to this escape pod to go home. Done. Also, my keys are now key cards, and I've got this little graphic that shows the status of each of the doors to the escape pod. So as I'm finding the digits, these little dots are turning blue. So now I can lock the doors and actually implement the questions. So when I pick a category now, the doors are locked and I can try to unlock them. So who's the first human in space? Yuri Gagarin. And that's going to unlock the doors. Yay! And now I can keep going. And the doors are locked again. I can unlock those and so on and so forth. Cool. Next thing I did was, instead of just randomly giving keys when you enter a room, I've decided to show the learner which rooms have keys so that they have one more thing to take into consideration when they're picking the next room. So I can see here that this room will give me a key card if I pick it, but it might not be the best layout for my objective. And finally, just for extra motivation, I've also added oxygen that depletes with every move. So every move costs you 1 oxygen, but some rooms will give you plus 10 oxygen. So again, you have to be strategic about that. Honestly, I'm not sure I'm going to keep that. I'm going to need to test it some more, but my structure is basically done. A couple of very important takeaways here. Number 1, and most importantly, this whole structure is just a meta game that sits on top of your core learning activity, what's happening in the rooms. The actual learning content wasn't the point of this demo, but in real life it is what matters most, and it's what I would do first. In this example, I used simple questions, but you could put anything in there, and I would encourage you, as always, to use learning activities that are relevant to your learning goals. Number 2, it doesn't matter if the learner doesn't make it all the way to the escape pod on the first try. As they keep practicing, they'll get better and better at whatever challenge you're putting into your rooms, so they'll get closer and closer to the goal with each playthrough. And since these candidate complete rooms are randomly generated, each playthrough is going to be different. And number 3, as you saw, when you're making a roguelike game like this, if you want to make it engaging, you have to balance randomness with player agency. My early versions showed that pure randomness feels unfair, but pure control can also make things too easy. So find the sweet spot between learner choices that matter and a little bit of playful uncertainty. So it took me a couple of days to build this, especially with my big screw up. But now that it's done, I can reuse it with any content. I would just swap out the core activity to match my learning goal. And I can also just swap out the art to match any theme. So I hope this was inspiring. And if you want to master these techniques to transform your training from boring to exciting, check out the Effective Gamification Framework, which is my step-by-step system for creating training that learners actually want to complete. The link is below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.